Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring something absolutely crucial, a topic that literally touches millions of lives. We're talking about the science of trauma, and more importantly, the pathways to healing. Trauma can leave these incredibly deep, invisible wounds that completely alter how our minds and bodies interact with the world. But here's the really good news. Modern science has given us an amazingly empowering way to look at these injuries. It shows us that our bodies, they aren't broken. Not at all. They're just kind of stuck in survival mode. And best of all, we have proven evidence-based ways to help them feel safe again.
Okay, let's dive into this because the journey from first recognizing trauma to actually managing our recovery, it's huge. And frankly, it can feel completely overwhelming. So how do we heal the invisible wounds of trauma? This isn't just some abstract medical question. It's deeply personal for veterans, for survivors, and really for anyone carrying the weight of severe stress. But don't worry, we're going to break it all down today, step by step, using the latest clinical guidelines and neuroscience to show you exactly how that healing happens. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by understanding traumatic stress, take a look at the face of PTSD, and then move into evidence-based trauma therapies. From there, we'll talk about regulating the nervous system, and finally, building a healing practice.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Understanding Traumatic Stress.
So, post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, what is it really? Well, it's an acute reaction to severe stress, usually occurring after exposure to a truly life-threatening event or serious injury. Basically, what happens is that your body's natural biological startle response, which is literally designed to keep you alive, stays stuck in high gear long after the danger is past. It's so important to realize this is not a weakness. It's actually an evolutionary survival mechanism that, well, it essentially just forgets how to turn itself off. Think about it like this. When you confront a threat, your body actually starts reacting before your mind even gets the full message. That instinctive startle response is incredibly helpful if you're in a combat zone or an emergency. But those exact same reactions that save your life in danger can become totally disruptive when you're just back home. Something as simple as a slamming door or a car backfiring can instantly trigger nightmares, hyperalertness, and this overwhelming urge to just withdraw and avoid the world.
And I really want to normalize this for a second. An estimated 6% of all Americans will experience PTSD at some point in their lives. That's a massive number of people. This condition totally spans the general population. We're talking about our neighbors, our coworkers, our family members. It's a very common human response to some very uncommon, overwhelming experiences.
Moving right along to Section 2, the face of PTSD.
And this brilliantly illustrates the significant toll that modern warfare takes on our service members. Looking at the numbers, a staggering 29% of Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans and an estimated 30% of Vietnam veterans will experience PTSD in their lifetime. To put that into perspective, that risk is basically double what we just saw for the general civilian population.
Just listen to this quote. "It didn't hit me until 9/11. My first reaction was, why now? Why so many years later?" For this Vietnam veteran, the trauma stayed hidden for decades, only to be triggered by the events of 9/11. A person can function for years, just carrying this heavy emotional burden, until one specific sight, sound, or news event triggers a severe, delayed reaction out of nowhere.
Now, readjustment and recovery present some very unique challenges depending on who you are. For instance, women veterans face some really specific hurdles when coming back to civilian life. Despite serving in combat zones and facing lethal threats, they often deal with severe social isolation in their communities. In fact, they frequently aren't even recognized as war veterans. Trying to reintegrate into civilian roles while managing these invisible injuries, it can be an incredibly isolating experience.
We also have to talk about another profound layer of trauma, military sexual trauma, or MST. I know this data is heavy, but it is so absolutely vital to understand. 1 in 4 women using VA healthcare report experiencing MST. This involves any sexual activity against one's will or repeated threatening harassment. And because these incidents so often go unreported, usually due to fear of retaliation or unit stigma, MST adds incredibly complex layers to PTSD recovery. It triggers severe anxiety and forces people to keep secrets long after their military service has ended.
Okay, let's shift gears to Section 3, evidence-based trauma therapies. So, what can we actually do about this? Well, prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy, and EMDR are the gold standard treatments recommended by the VA and DoD. Think of prolonged exposure as helping folks safely confront the trauma reminders they've been avoiding. Cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, is all about challenging and changing those negative beliefs that take root after a trauma. And EMDR, that combines processing the memory with specific eye movements. Each of these unique therapies is incredibly effective at helping the brain reprocess the traumatic event.
So the crucial point is this: individual, trauma-focused psychotherapy is actually more effective than medications for treating PTSD. Yeah, you heard that right. Therapy leads to greater, much longer-lasting improvements in symptoms, and it comes with way fewer risks for negative side effects compared to pharmacological treatments. That's a huge deal.
There's a great concept here. Vagus nerve exercises build the container. The deepest layers of relational trauma typically require the presence of a safe, attuned other to heal. We call this the both-and approach. Basically, clinical therapy does the deep, necessary psychological healing. But doing at-home physical exercises that specifically target your nervous system, that builds your daily capacity to cope. It literally builds the container, making you resilient enough to actually handle that deep clinical work. Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, regulating the nervous system.
You might have actually heard of the vagus nerve lately. It's the longest cranial nerve in your body, and engaging it through specific exercises is literally like applying a vagal brake to your internal engine. By stimulating this nerve, you're sending a direct biological signal to your brain and heart to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Basically, it shifts your body right out of that stressful fight-or-flight mode and back into feeling safe and connected.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it explains why some really common advice completely fails. You absolutely must match your strategy to your specific nervous system state. If you're in sympathetic activation, panicking, heart racing, you need grounding and long exhales. But if you're in dorsal vagal shutdown, feeling totally numb and checked out, calming deep breathing can actually make you feel more disconnected. Crazy, right? In shutdown mode, you actually need gentle movement to wake the body up before you try to calm it down. So for those moments of really high anxiety, here's a totally neurobiologically proven tool you can use right now. It's called the physiological sigh. It goes like this. You take 2 quick inhales through the nose to fully inflate your lungs, and then release 1 long, slow exhale through the mouth. Why does this work? Well, it's based on something called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. When you inhale, your heart naturally speeds up. But when you deliberately extend that exhale, you're pressing that vagal brake we talked about, sending a powerful biological signal of safety straight to your heart.
And that leads us to our final section, Section 5, Building a Healing Practice.
The absolute beauty of these vagal exercises is that they require zero equipment. Seriously, none. Just 5 minutes of long exhales in the morning sets a calm baseline for your whole day. Things like singing, humming, or even vigorously gargling directly stimulate your vocal cords, which are actually connected right to the vagus nerve. Splashing freezing cold water on your face, that triggers the ancient mammalian dive reflex, which instantly drops your heart rate. And even just gentle, rhythmic movement, like taking a simple walk, signals safety to the brain. Consistency with these little tools builds massive resilience over time.
Let's move to our next point and see how all of this builds a completely different mindset around recovery. This is just so important. Self-care is not a test. It is not just another item on your to-do list to stress over. Your nervous system was shaped by what happened to you, and what it really needs is gentleness, not the pressure of optimizing your health. When you do these exercises, you're simply befriending your nervous system and gently reminding it that it is safe to rest.
I want to leave you with this final, vital question to think about. Whether you are navigating clinical PTSD yourself, supporting a loved one, or honestly, just managing the chronic stress of modern life, healing is possible. The science is entirely on your side. So how can you bring tenderness and safety to your own nervous system today? What's one small, empowering step you can take? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep healing, and I will see you next time.